Sabres win again. Peyton Krebs demoted again, and someone says no to Buffalo. All coming up here in the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. The Sabres win in Tampa Bay 3-2 over the Lightning. It took overtime, but they got the job done. That does mean, however, the Sabres only gain 1 point on the team that is in that second wildcard position, which is Tampa. We'll talk about coming up what happened in the game, the overtime goal. There is another one of these games where Peyton Krebs kind of gets stapled to the bench or played with the fourth line. And in this game, you had a little bit of both. We'll talk about Krebs and Chris Tanev, defenseman from the Calgary Flames, traded to the Stars this week. And we have some reporting from Pierre LeBrun that indicates the Sabres were in on this, but not surprisingly, there's a very familiar reason why it didn't get done. We'll get to that coming up in the later portion of today's show. And before we get to anything, I should probably let you know that there is a trade rumor just as I'm getting started here from Elliot Friedman. Nothing major. Kyle Okposo sounds like he might be on the move. He said the other day that when asked about the trade deadline, that him and Kevyn Adams are on the same page, and I'll leave it at that. I take that to mean that Kyle Okposo is about to get traded, because if he was not about to get traded, he very easily would have answered that question with something along the lines of, I want to see this through. I'm a Buffalo Sabre. I'm the captain of this team. You know, we're not out of this yet. That's what you would have expected. Instead, we've got, Kevin and I are on the same page. I'll leave it at that. I tend to think that means that he's getting dealt. And here's Friedman, who says the New York Rangers are one team that is interested in Kyle Okposo. He's got a connection to Chris Drury through USA Hockey. They would have probably overlapped playing against each other maybe for a year or two. Either way, Okposo to the Rangers maybe is an idea for the trade deadline for some mid-round pick. So Sabres win 3-2 over the Tampa Bay Lightning. We had a lot of good texts on our text line, joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. If you want to sign up, got a good question from our text line involving Peyton Krebs. I'm going to save that, though, for the second segment of today's show. The game was kind of uneventful, I thought. I mean, neither team to me looked all that sharp. 23 shots for the Sabres, 23 shots for the Lightning. Shot attempts in this game, 43 for Buffalo at 5-on-5, 39 for Tampa. Neither of those numbers are all that high. If you're used to, you're used to more like the 50s or 60s for that. Scoring chances in this game, 19 for Buffalo, 15 for Tampa. High danger chances, though, only 2 for the Sabres, 6 for the Lightning. The Sabres had no good scoring chances from the middle of the slot. They had a bunch from the face-off circles, but nothing in the middle or right in front of the net, which is why you only get 2 high danger chances at the end of it. And that's kind of what my eyes said too. I thought they did okay. I thought there were stretches where the Sabres looked like the better team. I think for much of the third period, the Sabres looked like the better team, save the final minute. The final minute looked like it was getting nerve-wracking. The Thompson, Tuck, and Greenway line. Greenway moved up. Skinner got benched. He didn't look healthy to me in this game. But that line was on the ice with a minute to go and was running around and almost gave up a goal that would have had Tampa win it. So, yeah, Skinner got benched. They moved the lines around. Greenway goes up to that top line. I thought that line played fairly well with Tuck and Thompson. Here was another game by Tage Thompson to kind of signify that he's at least a little bit back in the last few weeks, at least. He scores his 18th of the season on the power play. Wicked wrister from the left wall, right where he scored a bunch of goals last year on the power play. Jeff Skinner, credit to him, because he does like a flyby screen of Vasilevsky. He sees that Thompson's about to shoot, and he roars in to cut across Vasilevsky's face, maybe disrupting him just enough to allow Thompson to pick this spot and score the goal. Thompson almost won the game in overtime as he flew past the defender. Tuck hit him in stride, and he almost went forehand, backhand, forehand, but he got robbed by Vasilevsky, and he also got a stick to the hands, which is what caused the power play that gave the Sabres the winning goal at the end of it. So there were chances. I thought the Thompson line played well. I didn't mention Tuck, who scored the first goal of the game for the Sabres, a pretty good individual effort. He turned the puck over, but he shot back. He, with his speed and reach, stole the puck away and then very quickly ripped the puck past Vasilevsky for his 17th goal of the season. You know, I'll get to the overtime goal, but looking at the line combinations from this game and some of the numbers from it, expected goals for. The worst line on the night was Dylan Cousins centering JJ Peterka and Zach Benson. That line was really bad when it came to expected goals for in this game. 17%. Middlestat, Okposo, Skinner. That line only played a couple of shifts together, second and third period. That's the line that got benched in the third period. I didn't think they played all that well either. I would agree with Don Granato on that front. He did not take Middlestat, though, out of the rotation. So Middlestat, Greenway, Robinson. They played fine together. They had 5 shot attempts when they were on the ice. 4. They had 3 against. They only played 4 minutes of ice time together. They had 2 scoring chances when they were on the ice. The Lightning had 0. Middlestat had a couple of turnovers in the third period while playing with that line. One at center ice that almost resulted in a really quality chance going back the other way for Tampa. So Middlestat jumped in on that line, despite the fact the best line on the night for the Buffalo Sabres, with 9 shot attempts for, 3 against, 3 scoring chances for, 1 against, and was the only line, because the only forward line, you had defensemen that jumped in here, the only forward line that had a high danger chance. The other one was on the power play that the Sabres had in the third period. Or maybe that would have been the overtime one for Dahlin. Either way, Krebs centering Eric Robinson and Zemgus Girgensons. So Krebs gets demoted. We'll talk about that. But before we get to that, just wanted to throw those numbers out there. The Krebs line was the best line. On the power play, on the Sabres getting this game to the garage, they won the game at the end. Oh, before they even saying that, shout out Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Another strong game. That dude gives the Sabres a chance every single night. A lot of good saves he made. 21 saves on 23 shots. Luukkonen was great. The power play at the end. After I didn't think really having that great a game, they had the goal from Thompson early on, a little bit of an individual effort. I didn't think the zone entries were all that good. I didn't think they created a lot of chances when they were set up. But what matters is that Matt Ellis, who I think fairly has been eviscerated throughout the season because he's in charge of the power play and he has overseen a power play that has gone from one of the best in hockey to one of the worst in hockey. And there have been no answers all year long. Except on this night. There was an answer. The Sabres go to a 4-on-3 in overtime. And Thompson takes the penalty. We were all going, oh, I can't believe he didn't finish that. Almost a highlight reel goal. Thompson to win it. So, okay, we're going to the power play now. So, the Sabres take a timeout. And there is Matt Ellis with the whiteboard. And he's drawn something up. Now, maybe nobody took notice of that. I didn't. I mean, I saw that he did it, but I didn't mark it down as anything interesting. I mean, you always see that. Anytime a team calls a timeout, anytime a team's going to a power play like that, and they have a second to talk about it, they might draw something up. So Ellis is drawing on his whiteboard. Then they come out. They lose the draw. The puck goes out of the zone, but it's a 4-on-3. A lot easier to get a zone entry. So they bring it in the zone, and maybe in the midst of that, you realize, wait a minute. Why is Greenway on the ice? I mean, I know Greenway's been fine for them, and he had an assist on this game. 4 shots on goal led the team. But Greenway is on the number 1. 4 guys, only 4 guys. No Tuck, right? Because Middlestat's out there, and Dahlin is out there, and Thompson's out there. No Tuck, no Cousins. I mean, hell, I can't even get to Peyton Krebs as an idea out there because Greenway. Okay, Greenway in front of the net. Whatever. So they get the puck in, and they set up. And there's everyone's in their normal spots. And that's typical. The Sabres don't usually have a lot of creativity to their power play. So there's Dahlin at the top, Thompson in his office on the left, the one-timer as a right shot guy. I've got Mittelstadt on the right on his one-timer, albeit not a great one, and Greenway in front of the net. So, okay, let's see what they do here. Isn't everybody in the world, including Tampa, I will say, expecting they're just going to try to get Thompson a one-timer? That's their whole game plan here. Not what happened. Dahlin gets the puck at the top. He plays pitch and catch. He throws it down to Mittelstadt. And I will say, I'll pat myself in the back here. I noticed this as it was happening. Because it was almost surprising to me. Dahlin never moves from the top unless, it's by necessity because the puck's down low, you got to keep it in. The game plan is never to move him from the point. So Thompson starts to move from his left spot back up top, just in case this doesn't work, because then you have Thompson back. Mittelstadt's holding on the right, and he's delaying. And while he's delaying, there goes Dahlin down the middle. And it was interesting because it looked very direct. And you knew that because Dahlin's not looking for the puck. As Dahlin moves down from the point, his eyes are squarely on the path to the back door. He's looking at the Tampa defender. He's making sure he doesn't get his stick tied up. And only when he arrives at his spot, the back door, is he got his head up looking for the puck. And right on cue, as he gets behind that Tampa defender, who obviously is not expecting Rasmus Dahlin, the defenseman, to be headed for the back door, Mittelstadt saucer passes it over Victor Hedman's stick. Probably a very well-placed personnel there. Mittelstadt is a passer and maybe one of the best passers on the team. He's the guy you trust to make that pass. He saucers it over Victor Hedman's stick, right on the tape. Dahlin is behind the defender. There is nothing that Tampa can do. All he's got to do is tap it into the back of the net. Game over. Let's go home to play Vegas. And that play, I thought pretty quickly, that's got to be a Matt Ellis play. And you know what? For all the crap he gets, which I think is 1,000% deserved, here's an opportunity where it looks like he did something awesome, and he should get his props for it in this one circumstance. So I did tweet that. We've all been hard on Matt Ellis for good reason, but I got to believe that's the exact play he just drew up in the timeout, and it worked. And sure enough, there was Dahlin and Don Granato immediately after the game that said Matt Ellis drew that one up. Can't take credit. That was on Matt Ellis. So, a lot of the texts that I had on our text line was blind squirrel theory, right? That blind squirrel, right once a day, whatever the hell it is. I had it written down. I shouldn't have had to have it written down. Whatever. It's a Friday. We're ready for the weekend, right? Blind squirrel, whatever. That was Matt Ellis in that moment. I don't know. You could say that. I don't think he's done a good job at overall in the season on the power play, but in that one moment, that's a pretty sweet play that he drew up. And he had Tampa off guard. He had me off guard. I would have never thought they were doing that. And it completely worked. And it was at the perfect time. And they won the game in overtime. Granato, by the way, mentioned that Ellis was watching tape of Tampa earlier that day. So he kind of figured it out maybe the day of that is something that could work on a 4-on-3 overtime goal. So credit to Matt Ellis on this night. When we come back, one other thing to stem from Sabres and Lightning. Peyton Krebs not only buried again, he was locked up and buried on the same night. Get to that when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented by Sleeper. It is almost the 3/4 mark of the Sabres season, regardless of where they're at in the standings. Want to remind you, you can win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper, our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. Check out bunch of studs. Doesn't have to be a Sabre. It could be McDavid. It could be Ovechkin. It could be Crosby, McKinnon, Cale Makar, anybody who will they record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, shots, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. And to win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you got to get correctly predicting 8-player stats, but then you can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with sleepers. So start paying attention, nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleepers terms of use for details and locational availability. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today, NFL Combine. The NBA season is really heating up. The first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Sabres win 3-2 over the Lightning, 28-4. They are at NHL 500, not real 500. We all know 28 wins, 32 losses. It's not real 500, but the NHL says it is, so whatever. The Sabres are 10 points back. Didn't do a lot for them. They were 11 going into the night behind Tampa. They were a bunch behind Detroit. They're 12 behind Detroit now, who lost to the Islanders, but no sense really doing a lot of the math and the standings updates as they're still a mile out of the playoffs. What came out of this game was not just the positive vibes of a win, but here we go with this garbage with Peyton Krebs again. I just don't understand it. In this game, it was right from the opening bell. There's the line combinations during warmups, 650. And I got to go to Twitter and see that after 1 week of feeling like I have been justified in a year-long campaign to get Peyton Krebs on a more skilled line. The guy finally gets on a more skilled line for a week, but he hadn't had a chance all year. Here he goes with Zach Benson and JJ Peterka, and he did great. They were the best line the Sabres have had the last 3 games. They created a lot of scoring chances. Sure, could they have created more goals? I mean, Krebs did only have 1 assist. If that's a criticism you want to lobby against them, then sure, I understand that. But 1 goal that he did set up was a game-tying goal to Owen Power that was massive. It tied the game, and then the Sabres went on to win it in overtime. So Granato decides to split up what's been the Sabres' best line because, seemingly, Casey Middlestat hasn't been producing. Think about how backwards this is. So Casey Middlestat, who had like 2 points in his previous 10 games. All right, he's not producing. He's on a line with Dylan Cousins and Jordan Greenway, but he's not producing. So, all right, we got to do something to heat up Casey Middlestat. So, because Middlestat's not performing, Krebs is the one now that's getting punished. Because the answer to fix Middlestat is basically to put him on the line that Krebs has been on and to put Krebs down to align with Zemgus Girgensons and Eric Robinson, 2 players that are never going to cash in on the chances that Krebs can create for a player. Right back to where we were, where the guy's not putting up points. The guy is blocked from developing as an offensive player because the only job left at the trough for the 4 Sabres centermen, when Peyton Krebs gets his turn, is defensive checking, role-playing center. That's all that's left for him as a role because he's got Middlestat above him, he's got Cousins above him, and he's got Thompson above him. Totally backwards, though, that Middlestat's the one struggling, Krebs is the one that's demoted. Why wouldn't it be that Middlestat would go down to the 4th line? Well, there are other reasons for that, right? There's a contract, and there might be potential trade interest being talked about around the league, and they might not want to do that, where they put Middlestat down on the 4th line. So again, the easy thing to do is to put Krebs on the 4th line. So Krebs goes down to the 4th line. And through 2 periods, I think you could argue, and again, I'm trying not to base this solely on my eyes because I like Krebs, and I know when he's out there, I'm looking for things that he does well. But I've got everybody else on Twitter and the text line, the numbers, telling me, no, he was the best. He was their best forward through 2 periods. So, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not alone in just thinking Krebs is I don't think Krebs is better than everybody else does on this night. Everybody thought he was playing well. And the numbers said that. Expected goals for percentage at 5-on-5 in this game, including defensemen, everybody, at 77%. There's Peyton Krebs. More than 10 percentage points above any other Sabre. He was great. The Sabres outshot the opponent 11-3 when he was on the ice. And there we go entering the third period. And where's Peyton Krebs? Where is he? One shift. Third period to overtime. One shift. For the guy that has been centering their best line for a week, that was the guy that was having the best 2 periods to open the game, doesn't see the ice in the third period. And the explanation from Granato was it was matchup based. I don't know what that means, though, when he was doing great in the matchup. 2 periods in. Is it a different matchup in the third period than it was in periods 1 and 2? Because periods 1 and 2 said, oh, this is a good matchup for Peyton Krebs. He's dominating out there. In fact, he created a chance to Zach Benson in the first period. Benson coming off the bench, Krebs at the end of his shift, and Krebs forehand to backhand saucer pass to Benson, who gets a scoring opportunity. And I immediately thought, or said to the text line, oh, only if they ever thought about putting him on a line with Krebs. The guy got 10 seconds with a truly skilled player and immediately created a scoring chance. And he did another one to Connor Clifton a little bit later on. Like, he had created for the Sabres some of their best chances, and he couldn't see the ice in the third. I got a good question from a texter that I'll spend more time on another day, but I want to touch on it here. One texter asked, so do you see a scenario where the Sabres can't keep both Krebs and Mitz, especially what they have in the pipeline? Or do you see them moving a player in the pipeline because they can keep both? I think this is a good question. Krebs and Mittelstadt. And the question is basically, can they coexist together on the same team? In essence, Cousins and Thompson are locked in. And they clearly treat and talk about Mittelstadt like he's a top 6 centerman without room to be a top 6 centerman. So he's relegated to the third line. The Sabres have said, Granato has said, they believe Krebs has top 6 talent. They don't act like it, but they have said it. I don't think they can coexist together. I would guess right now, you're not going to see both on the team next year. And I would argue it doesn't make sense to see both on the team next year. You're already playing someone below where they probably should be on the third line. You're wasting them completely if they're on the fourth line. So, in my mind, this is an easy one. Who's got more value right now? It's Casey Mittelstadt. Who demands a bigger contract right now? It's Casey Mittelstadt. You trade Casey Mittelstadt because he's a top 6 center, and you have proof of concept of that. Krebs, I think you have proof of concept as a third-line center, but he doesn't have the opportunity to do it because there's too many guys blocking him above. So I don't think the two can coexist. Krebs is an RFA at the end of the year. Mittelstadt's an RFA at the end of the year. I think they should trade Mittelstadt and re-sign Peyton Krebs, if you ask me. Good question. I want to talk more about that on another show. When we come back, a player that has been traded in the league said no to the Buffalo Sabres. Chris Tanev goes to Dallas, not Buffalo. We'll tell you why and the details of the reporting we've seen on this in the last day or two. That's coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented by Camino Consulting. You've heard of our online families and couples course and have taken advantage of the Locked On 25% discount running to the end of the month. But what about the live seminars in both sport and business? The challenge in differentiating candidates and recruits is an endless battle. Everyone can demonstrate their measurables and qualifications, but we all know it is the intangibles that matter when those things are similar. Contact Camino Consulting for their team and management seminars to get a peek behind the curtain and watch your next recruiting class or hiring group become one of the most effective you've ever seen. Both because you identify the right candidates and because you've learned how to communicate and motivate them in accord with their own preferences. But you aren't in business management or working with the team. They pay referrals. Make some money, making your workplace and favorite teams better. Every group works together better at the end of the year than week one. So contact Camino Consulting at CaminoConsulting.ca and get on the fast track to understanding. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast also presented by Gametime. You should not have to worry about where you buy your tickets to your next big event. Gametime, the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. See all the views from your seats before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All in prices, show your total up front so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. Buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. With zone deals, you pick the section and Gametime picks the seats for big-time savings. And the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, Sabres and Golden Knights. Saturday is what is next up. We'll see if Jack Eichel might make his return. He has not played since January 11th out of a non-contact jersey, so we'll see. A player traded in the league this week, Flames defenseman Chris Tanev, goes from Calgary to Dallas, a player that's been in the rumor mill all year long. We've been waiting for the first shoe to drop for Calgary, right? We have been talking about the Flames, who have just been right on the verge of completely blowing it up, but have not pulled the trigger to do it. And even this isn't doing a blow up, but it's a start for the Flames. They finally move a guy, and it's defenseman Chris Tanev to Dallas. So Tanev gets moved to Dallas for a second-round pick, some other prospect and pick stuff, but the centerpiece is the second-round pick. Now, there is another report that says a team offered the Flames a first, but we don't know who that is, and that they chose Dallas because that's where Tanev wanted to go. That's where they could work out a deal with him, given that he has a modified no-trade clause, which is a 10-team no-trade list. So, then we get Pierre LeBrun, who reports that Buffalo was a team that had shown interest in Tanev over the last 2 months. And had he been acquired, the Sabres were interested in an extension. However, Tanev had control over his destination and opted to waive it for Dallas, not Buffalo. So, couple of alarming things here. I might want to start with the extension part of that, because that might be the more surprising element here. Tanev is 34 years old. Next year will be his age 35 season. The Sabres were ready to give an extension to a 35-year-old defenseman. I don't think he's that bad. I think he's a fine player. But that's your answer? An extension to a 35-year-old defenseman? Second thing, I want to believe with every fiber of my being, the Sabres are smart enough that they're not the team that offered a first-round pick, given that it would probably be a top 10 pick for 35-year-old Chris Tanev. I gotta believe with every fiber of my being, they are not the team that offered a first-round pick. Gotta believe it. 3, no surprise, but maybe it is something we should mention more maybe I should mention more when talking about Kevyn Adams and his inability to make trades, that a big key here is players saying no, players having trade protection, and probably every player in the league that has trade protection using it against Buffalo. A 10-team no-trade list is what Tanev had. And I gotta believe that 99% of the players in the league that got no trade lists have the Sabres on it. Unless they're from here or they know someone on the team that could speak to it's not as bad as it seems. If they would even say that. Why would Tanev not have Buffalo on his list? It's not fair to ask that he wouldn't. So that's a player the Sabres might have wanted, might have been willing to pay the price on, but you just can't get the guy to come here until you're good. And that's a chicken and egg thing, right? It's going to feel frustrating because it's totally chicken and egg of the Sabres got to make trades to get better, but they can't make trades to get better until they get better because that's when they can convince players to come here. That's the most frustrating part of all of this. If they can't even get a Chris Tanev to come here, which is who is he? He's a second pair defenseman in Calgary that's in the waning years of his career. If they can't get that guy to come here, what come on. What are we expecting them to pull off? But that's the job. Sorry, that's the job. That's the standard Adams has to be held to. It's tough. I know it's tough, but you don't get points for trying. You gotta do it. And I think back about Jacob Chychrun from a year ago and how the Coyotes gave him up for such a low price to Ottawa, and how I said I can't imagine the Sabres didn't top this offer. But there are other factors, and one of them could have been maybe Jacob Chychrun just didn't want to go to Buffalo. And when that happens, again, you don't get points for trying. So this is where I've always liked the Rasmus Andersson idea is you got to play the feud. You got to only look for players that don't have no trade lists. I mean, that's the game the Sabres are in. They can't get Chris Tanev. They can't get Noah Hannafin, who's got an 18 no trade list. They can't get who else? They can't get Michael Backlund from Calgary, who's got a full no movement clause. They can't. If you see on Cap Friendly NTC or NMC, I think for the near future, when we're talking trades on this show and with your buddies or whatever, if you're willing enough to go to Cap Friendly, if you want to dig that far into a trade idea, you go to Cap Friendly. If you see the letters NTC, or NMC, cross it off the list. I think that's it. You're gonna be more accurate, I think, doing that than assuming they could get anybody that's got an NMC or an NTC. They can't get guys that have protection, that have leverage, and that's going to be a very, very frustrating part of this offseason if it starts to look like they're not going to be able to make any deals. This is why I liked Anderson, and this is why I talked about Kirill Kaprizov. No trade clause until July, but they're not getting that done. All right, that's it for us today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Jack Eichel returns to town. Whether he's in uniform or not, we do not know, but he will have a ring. The ultimate heel move by Eichel, by the way, would totally be he scores a goal, he takes off the glove, and he reveals that he's wearing the Stanley Cup ring on the ice. But I don't know. We'll see if Jack wants to go full heel like that. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Sabres and Golden Knights. I'll be at the game, so say hi if you see me. Should be one of the more entertaining ones, whether it's because we're laughing because of how miserable this is and Eichel scoring another hat trick, or because the Sabres are beating the Golden Knights. We shall see. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national sports 24 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Talk to you next time here on Locked On Sabres.